Okay, so I wanted to make a guide for my circular saw so that I could make some nice straight cuts. And I've seen this done before, and I think I even made one myself years ago, but anyway, what I did was I took this is my scrap plywood, but I took this piece right here. This is off a bigger piece of plywood, and this was a factory edge, and it was nice and straight. I sighted down, it looked pretty good, so I thought I'll use that. So I cut that 4-inch strip out and didn't really think too much of it and attached it to, I think this bottom piece was about 11 or 12 inch wide piece, and I just glued it. I put some weight on top of the that 4-inch strip to weight it down as it was gluing up, and I thought, okay, yeah, everything's great. Well, I made a couple of cuts and I thought, boy, something seems a little off. And sure enough, as I sight down, this guide edge right here, there's a little bit of a, I guess it'd be called a crook. I would call it a bow, but I think it's a crook. And I was thinking, well, maybe it's just because, this is some thinner plywood, that's why that happened. But I ended up buying some 3/4 inch maple veneered plywood. It's some pretty good quality stuff, and they're again sighted down the factory edges, and the factory edges look perfectly straight. But the same thing happened. When I cut out my 4-inch strip, there was a pretty good sized crook to it immediately. Alright, so what I did is I took this 4-inch piece that I cut out, and I've got it just butted up against that's a full sheet of the maple veneered 3/4 inch plywood, and it hasn't been cut, so it's a factory edge. But you can see on one end, got a nice tight gap there, but as you get to the middle, it's a pretty good sized gap, and of course on the other end, it's a nice tight fit. So I think what happens is when you cut out a thinner strip of plywood, even though you sight down the factory edge and everything looks nice and straight, as soon as you cut that, I think that thinner strip, it wants to crook on you, and you're left with this big gap. Well, if you have that crook in there, of course, and you're trying to use that as a guide for your circular saw, you're not going to get a straight cut. So I think what I'm going to do is, when I go to fasten this 4-inch piece to an 11-inch piece below it, I'm going to use the factory edge that's still here on this uncut piece of plywood, and I'm just going to clamp. You can see when I put pressure on there, I can close that gap. So I'm going to clamp that together, and then I'm going to fasten, starting in the middle, I'll fasten and work my way out to each end. And hopefully that'll keep that board, that top, this 4-inch piece nice and straight. So what I tried was, as I had mentioned before, I was going to clamp that thin 4-inch piece to the full sheet of plywood just to straighten out the 4-inch piece. And then I was going to glue it and screw it, but I thought, well, just in case this doesn't work, I won't glue it, and then maybe if I have to, I'll try readjusting. But yeah, I don't know if you can tell in the video, but yeah, that gap closed up real nice. There was a pretty good size, like you say, about 1/8 of an inch in the middle. This is an 8-foot long piece, so I'll unclamp it now and see if it stays straight. So I took the clamps off, and everything has stayed nice and straight. I've been using this jig for several months, and it's worked out pretty well.